Welcome to a brief history of the Super Nintendo, one of the most influential consoles of all time, and the #1 reason that most kids assume their parents were chain smokers back in the day. Now, it all started in 1988. Sega, and whoever made the TurboGrafx, not really that important, each put out a 16-bit console, thus taking market dominance away from Nintendo, who had been the world heavyweight video game champion ever since Shigeru Miyamoto DDT'd Hulk Hogan through a folding table 5 years prior. They had maintained this championship through the power of their flagship console, the NES, which stands for Nintendo Entertainment System, or Nasty Ear Sex, depending on what kind of stuff you're into. The NES was an 8-bit console, which, for the math enthusiasts out there, was half as many bits as the new 16-bit consoles, and was therefore not as cool. Just what is a bit? I have no idea, but they were pretty precious back in the day. And upon seeing their dominance slip, Nintendo got to work. One 80s rock power ballad and a quick training montage later, they had regained the eye of the tiger. This guy on the console, this guy on the games, and out came the Super Nintendo and its 5 release titles. They could now successfully compete in the 16-bit market, and thus begins the next great arc of the Super Nintendo tale. The console wars. Now, I grew up in the 90s, so it's hard not to remember. The bombs, the sirens, the women and children screaming and running for cover. But that was in Rwanda, and probably a topic for a different channel if I'm being honest. North America was actually pretty chill. I mean, we were fighting over video game consoles, so it could have been worse. In reality, the console war was just a hilarious marketing campaign and power struggle between Nintendo and Sega. There was also the TurboGrafx, as I alluded to before, but they don't even have a picture when you scroll over their name in Wikipedia, so for all I care, they might as well have been a toaster. And now it's no surprise that Nintendo won. Not sure if you've noticed, but you don't have a Sega Switch in your living room. The marketing campaign, however, as I already mentioned, was fantastic. Sega positioned themselves as the cool kids. They had the leather jackets, they smoked the cigarettes, and they tried to convince everybody that Nintendo kids still like to give their grandmother sponge baths. But joke's on them, because, the sponge baths were just a way to get enough money to buy the console. You didn't actually have to give them out after you got the thing. Duh. And at the end of the day, it didn't really even work. For one simple reason. Nintendo had Mario. And Link. And Donkey Kong, Yoshi, Kirby, Ness, Fox, Samus, Mega Man. Sega had Sonic and this kid. So it wasn't really any surprise as to why they didn't stack up. And after a number of years of hard-fought, hand-to-hand Klingon-style death matches, Nintendo came out on top and owned the entirety of the video game universe once again, all the way up until the PlayStation showed up a few years later. Throughout its lifetime, the Super Nintendo went on to found and improve on basically every single iconic franchise that they have today. Some of the most memorable games, unforgettable soundtracks, and more design iterations than any console probably ever needs. I think more than any console has probably ever had, to be honest. It was a life-changing machine for basically every kid in the 90s, which, if the internet has any truth to it, was the greatest generation of all time, thus making the Super Nintendo the greatest console of all time. It's just science. Check and mate, ladies and gentlemen. And on top of all of that, at the end of the day, it was also really affordable. Only cost me like 17 sponge baths. And that's the end of the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. Love ya. Bye-bye.